Hi everybody, it's Simon Keeling here, weatherweb.net, and it is Friday the 23rd of May. Thanks again for watching. What a nightmare for forecasting at the moment. So difficult to try and pin down the detail in the forecast. The overall patterns looks to be okay, but trying to get this detail into things is really proving very, very difficult. Yeah, I know, it's forecasters' excuse, it's what we say, but it's genuine. We really do have a problem at the moment in trying to get the... It's not in the in how the weather systems themselves are going to develop. It's the detail underneath them. This is the 7 to 10 day mean of the 500 millibar flow from... We've got the ECMWF on the left here, we've got the GFS here on the right. And so this is for the period from next... when are we? We're going forward from next Friday through to Monday the 2nd of June. And ECMWF, look, has the ridge out in the Atlantic. It has a trough, look, down here across northern parts of Spain. Awful weather across Spain and into Central Europe. And the GFS has a similar sort of pattern. But look, the ridge isn't as strong in the Atlantic. It's stronger to the north of the British Isles. And it develops the low more deeply, or the lower centre of heights more deeply, down into the Bay of Biscay. The GFS is tending to push more unsettled weather further northwards across the UK than the ECMWF. Now, there's very little difference actually between those two models overall, as you can see, but it's that subtle difference in the position of the cold pool and where it's going to be that makes the massive difference as to whether the southern parts of the UK have a really, really wet week next week, or whether it's just the far south of England and actually the majority of the country is generally drier. Now, ECMWF has certainly been on the more favourable side of things, but the GFS has stayed on the more unsettled side, and this is what the GFS predicts in terms of total rainfall through to the end of next Saturday, so the 31st of May. And huge totals of rain it's trying to predict here, look, across central and northern parts of Wales. That's 160 millimetres of rain almost across Snowdonia. And generally looking at 70 to 100 millimetres of rain across those western areas of the country. Also, look, almost 100 millimetres of rain coming into the southeast, with 30 to 60 millimetres elsewhere, but much, much drier, you'll notice there, through Scotland. I think what we can say through this forecast is actually Scotland's going to be one of the driest places, and it may be that dry weather actually is further south, and so the boundary between the heavier rain may well be, should the ECMWF come true, somewhere in there. So let's just clear that for you, and I'll show you that boundary again. So actually, according to the GFS, according to the ECMWF, sorry, the boundary for the heavier rain is somewhere in there. But it does look as if southeastern parts of England, far south of England, are going to be wet during the course of the coming week. And these subtle changes in forecasts over the last few days, I mean, they really do get you down as a forecaster, because you kind of think, oh, right, I've got the story, I know what's going on, and then you get the detail in the forecast the following day, and it's all gone to pot again. So let's just look at a comparison between the various different models. This is the comparison for midnight next Wednesday. We've got the Canadian here, the GFS, ECMWF, and the UK Met Office. And on first glance, actually, they're all very similar. Look at the upper pattern. We've got cold pools through here. Yeah, so we've got an upper pattern like that. Now, this is where we can dispel some of the myth of the jet stream and show that the jet stream, the idea of where it is, doesn't always work, because the jet is actually through here at the moment on all of the various different charts, okay? So it's well away from the country. In fact, there's another branch of it that breaks off further north here. So it's actually quite away from the country, and what that very often will bring is a period of more settled weather when that's in position such as that. But with a cold pool trapped in here, what it then does, it brings you more unsettled conditions and makes these conditions really tricky to try and pin down and forecast. So actually, from those charts, you know, what you would say is, well, looks as if it's going to be quite unsettled across the country. Certainly, if the GFS and ECMWF, and also to some extent the UK Met Office were to come true, yes, we'd find rain across eastern parts of England, south east England as well, into parts of the Midlands, but western parts of the country would be much, much drier. But if the Canadian comes true and the low's in that position there, then actually it's Scotland, it's Ireland, it's Northern England that's wettest, and actually the south and the east wouldn't be that bad. So what do? Well, on the balance of probabilities and looking how these things usually develop, I suggest that actually this idea of a northeasterly flow is probably about right, and therefore the GFS probably isn't correct when it was forecasting so much rainfall so far north and so far west. There will be rainfall, some of it could be heavy, and it's probably going to be across more eastern and southern areas, but the north and the west should stay dry. Now that's just 120 hours, that's just 5 days, and we've already got massive differences in the forecasts. So let's go further. This is the 10-day forecast. Now the UK Met Office doesn't produce a forecast out to this long from the model, but we do get them from the Canadian, from the GFS and from the ECMWF. And big thing to notice here is, look, the GFS again makes far more of the trough at upper levels across the country. The ECMWF has the trough as a cut-off feature down across northern Spain. If that came true, that's awful weather again for the summer across France and parts of Spain. But what it does do is make much more look of the ridge building in from the Atlantic. And with that northeasterly flow, again, would be unsettled across southeastern parts of England, southern England. But actually the majority of the country, the northern two-thirds and western two-thirds of the country, would be drier conditions given that flow. The Canadian is somewhere in between. It has a complete shift on where it thinks this cold pool is going to be. It tries to get the ridge in of sorts, but it's nearer to the ECMWF than the GFS's. So I think what we have to look at here, again, I'm leaning into the ECMWF idea here of the south and the southeast being wetter. I think the GFS has probably overplayed the unsettled nature of the weather and probably trying to make too much of the trough. One of the things that the GFS can get itself stuck into is when it sees a dominant feature such as a trough or a ridge, it just runs with it. So I'm still going to go with this overall idea that during the course of next week things do very, very slowly, at least in the north and the west, do tend to get better. But I think we've got to go with this risk of heavy rain across southeast England and across central southern England. Some significant totals of rain could be there. There could well be 50 to 80 millimetres of rain next week across East Anglia, the southeast of England, running through southern England, perhaps as far west as parts of Devon. I know, it's supposed to be spring. Anyway, this is the latest output from the JMA. So this is from the Japanese Met Agency. Just released their latest long-range outlooks. Now, this is week 1, and so this is running up to the 30th. So this goes up to next Friday. In fact, I think it goes up to next Thursday, 29th. There's the cold pool look down to the south. Here's the higher than normal heights towards the north, and that just stuck down towards the south of the country. Good agreement from that to the other models. So Japanese going for a similar solution to the one I've just described. Now, week 2, going from the 30th of May through to the 5th of June. Again, look, cold pool down to the south. It's trying to show this extended ridge, extended trough, down from the Atlantic through the UK with the ridge out here towards the east and again down towards the south. It brings in more of an east to southeasterly flow across the country. But given that scenario, it does try to keep more southern parts of the UK under the more unsettled conditions. It leans more into the GFS. So the Japanese certainly want to stick with this idea of the weather not settling down into the early part of June, which is, of course, and I'll hold my hands up for this. This is what we were saying. We always did hint that it was going to be Scotland, Northern England, Northern Ireland that saw the driest of the weather, with the south seeing thundery rain at times. But this is more than thundery rain. This is some quite heavy rain that it's seeing across southern parts of England. And just to compare it with the CFS, that's had a bit of a change of sorts over the last few days. I was telling you about this yesterday and on Wednesday. A subtle shift. It's brought this cold pool, this lower than normal heights, further north through the country. So that's week 1. There's week 2, where you see it's got these higher than normal heights to the north, still got lower than normal heights down towards the south of. And what we would see on this is this attempt for northeasterly winds to get in across the country. But again, given that pattern, it's the northern half of the country that sees dry weather, with the south in certainly in outbreaks of rain. So I think southern parts of the country, again, stressing this idea that south and the southeast stay in more unsettled conditions, with bands of rain just flinging their way round from the continent. And the forecast for weeks 3 and 4 from the Japanese looking like this. So this takes us from the 6th of June through to the, where would it be? It's taking us up to the 20th of June. And it tries to build the heights back, look, but still got this trough feature in the Atlantic, still got low than normal heights down towards the south. So what the model's trying to do here is to pull us back into better conditions. It's saying the higher than normal heights are close. It may well be that we see this improvement coming in again more generally across the country during June. I mean, let's not miss this here. You know, if you're in Northern England and Scotland and Northern Ireland, actually, this may not be too bad for you in Ireland. This may be quite a good month. But if you're in the south and southeast, that's where we've got the wettest of the conditions. Week 3 looks like this from the CFS. Look, higher than normal heights north, lower than normal south. Normal generally across the country. It doesn't want to see this idea of the higher than normal heights building back in particularly very quickly. And if we look at week 4, it actually slips us back into more unsettled conditions. So, you know, I'm a bit anxious. I did say, and we were looking at the models, weren't we, that we're predicting the long-range models are drier than normal June. But this is starting to stack up now against that and takes into a wetter than normal June across the south, but drier than normal across the north. So the UK in a real kind of dichotomy between these two opposing scenarios of weather, and it's where that boundary between the dry and the wet weather tends to lie. We were in a drier phase. We now seem to have gone into more of a wetter phase as far as the models are concerned. It may be that it swings back. For me, I just worry that once we get this low down in the Med or close to the Med, that it's not going to want to move very far. Although, opposed to that, you know, we are getting to a significant period of heating now through the year, and you would expect there to be some sort of compensation against that trough being able to form, and so pressure and the heights tending to build. But if I've got to go one way or the other, I'm going to go with the south of the UK, southern England, East Anglia, tending to be in wetter than normal conditions. I think I'm going to go for more northern parts of England, Scotland, perhaps western parts of Wales and Ireland, being in dry conditions, and that tendency to improve through June more generally, although still got that risk of rain down to the south. Okay, well, I'm going to have to have a lie down now, because this is just so difficult to try and get structured into a format that's easily understandable, particularly when you're trying to explain the fact, and I know that many of you watching this, in fact most of you watching this, have more than a basic knowledge of meteorology, and so you understand that the output from the models will show at times good consistency, or relatively good consistency, in the long range. It's the detail of what's underneath it that causes big problems. So I'm going to leave you with that for now. As I say, lie down in a darkened room. And thanks again for watching weatherweb.net. Do please tell your friends about us, and whatever you do, have a great day and keep the sun shining. Bye for now.